Hello, thanks for checking out my video. Today we are going to be using blocks during our therapy session. I really like to use blocks for a variety of reasons, mostly because I can use them from anything from a little bit of fine motor control, some pinch and pincer grasp development, or maybe a little three-jaw chuck development. And I'm also really able to generate some good graded muscle force, that sort of thing. I'm working on extension of my upper extremities, building some good stability in my deltoids, and then I can also increase the complexity of the design all the way up to where I'm doing parquetry puzzles, that sort of thing. I can make my own parquetry puzzles. There's just a bunch of different ways that I can use these blocks throughout my therapy sessions, so that's why I like to use them. The first way that we're going to use them today is just with stacking the blocks. That should be one of our first goals here. We want to develop our graded muscle force. That's basically just placing an object or using an object with the appropriate amount of force. So in this case, we're placing the object. So we are not smashing the object down to the ground. We're not just dropping the object. We're using the exact amount of muscle force needed to control our movement and place the object on top of the other block. So we're going to start by just doing some simple stacking. So when we start with the stacking exercise, we're going to get all these other pieces out of the way. Maybe you have some different colors in there. That's fine. Anything works. But we're really working on developing our pincer grasp, or maybe a three-jaw chuck. We're not trying to grab it with the palm of our hand. We really want to use some fine motor control here, and also develop our graded muscle force. So the placement of the first block should be directly in the middle, right in my central vision. That's really what I want to be developing here as I start thinking about other skills to develop, is some visual motor skills. So where am I going to place the object? I want to place the object directly in the midline of my body, or the child's body, so that they have to use both eyes together in the central visual field, kind of that range, and work on their ability to maintain visual stability to a target. These ocular motor skills are really important as we advance kind of up the visual motor skills pyramid. We really have to develop this visual ocular stability and the ability to focus on an object. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and work on our placement of the object now. So we want to build our tower as high as we can get it. I think in this case we have maybe 7 blocks to play with. So we're going to go ahead and just place them there, one on top of the other, the best that we can. And if they fall over, that's okay. A lot of times kids like to knock them over, so we can kind of play a game. Let's see how many we can get to. We'll count along the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then at 7, we knock them all over. So we just try to keep it fun, using our fine motor pincer grasp, or maybe a three-jaw chuck. That's these 2 fingers plus the thumb, and using graded muscle force to place the object on top of the other object. If the blocks keep falling over, maybe we want to increase our base of support. So we'll put down maybe a rectangle. Maybe we can put it up against the wall, that sort of thing, right here against the wall, so that there's some sort of backdrop and a little bit of stability. So it's a tactile cue for me to start developing the muscle ability to really use that graded muscle force appropriately. So we're going to go ahead and maybe use the wall here as a stabilizer. Use a larger block if you have to, or if you want to. You can kind of mix things up a little bit. Again, I'm using this wider base and the backdrop, so I can be a little bit more casual, I guess, with the way I place it. I'm not really developing as much graded muscle force as if I was to have a smaller base of support and using like a one cube on top of the other. So I really have to be precise with my placement of this one. So that's one way that we can, make it easier for people who don't have as much graded muscle force or graded muscle force control versus those who do have a little bit more control. We would want to, decrease the base of support. So increase base of support for people who are working on developing their graded muscle force and graded muscle control, and less of a base of support if we are a little bit more precise with our graded muscle force. Now that we've worked on this for a little bit, I think that it's time for us to switch the activity up, but I want to keep my student engaged in this tabletop activity and this tabletop time. So I want to change things up a little bit where I'm not being overly repetitive with the task that I'm asking them to complete. So maybe we'll just take a little break here from the construction side of things and just work on some basic color discrimination sort of thing. Maybe a little discrete trial. I'll switch it up and throw in some applied behavior terms there. So we're going to be getting the red one, we're going to be getting the blue one, we're going to be getting the green one, and we can switch it up based on whatever color we want to learn. Another thing we can do is if we have shapes, say the triangle or the square, we can do some visual discrimination activities with these different shapes. So which one is the triangle? We're identifying the triangle. Which one is the square? That's the square. That's another great way to keep your kids engaged in this activity just a little bit longer, maybe as we work on thinking about different ways that we can use these activities here. Maybe you want to do a little freestyle build and just build whatever it is that your kid wants to build. That's okay too. That's a good time. Now's a good time to do that. We're just kind of taking a little playtime and exploring. That's always encouraged. So we did a little freestyle construction where we just built whatever it is that we wanted to build, which was really great for just developing a little bit of intrinsic motivation to use these materials. We don't really like to force materials on anyone. We want this activity to be fun for everyone. So, if they want to build something their own way, then I think we should encourage that. So now that we can have maybe a little bit more of a structured activity, I think we should go ahead and start doing some matching. This is going to really help when we go to our 3D construction from a 2D sequence. So things, I guess the most highly used of those items, it would be like a Legos set. So you would have a picture of your completed construction, and you would put the pieces together to match that. So that's the end goal. We're starting here with some 3D to 3D matching. So if I want to start matching this square, or the cube, I'm just going to call it a square for the sake of this video. I'm going to match the square to that square. I can even put it right next to it. It doesn't have to be directly on top. We can just match it that way. And if we're going to do, say, a red triangle, we want to look over here, find our red triangle, and then match it. So we're not being too precise about our placement of it. We're really just kind of matching these things. And then as we develop our skills, we do want to work on matching directly on top of it, because as we move into our 2D to 3D matching, we want to make sure that when we do things like a parquetry puzzle, that we're able to really match our piece directly to the picture here. So let's go ahead and just do some basic matching just to start with. So I'm going to get these pieces out of the way. And again, we're just matching our 3D to 3D. So I want to start here, match on the side, develop our skills, match on top. So as we move forward, we really want to start building on the complexity of the design. So we're going to be moving from one piece and matching the one piece to then doing two pieces. We're going to be matching two pieces like that. And then we're going to maybe throw in a third piece where we're going to start building three at a time. So 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to be increasing the complexity of the design as our student learns these skills. And as we're increasing the complexity of the design, it really affords us the opportunity to also work on some visual motor skills. We're always working on our visual motor skills, so from horizontal pursuits to vertical pursuits, or just scanning in general. These are really skills that we're going to be working on all the time. So we always want to use these opportunities to work on them. So we're going to spread out our visual field. I'm going to remove some of this visual clutter out of the way. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put the target on one side and we're going to put the pieces on the other side. So we're going to have to move from the right side over to our target side over here where we match. These are just developing some horizontal pursuits. So I'll just do one at a time and I'll move my finger as the eyes would move. So we're getting this piece right here. We're looking back over for our target piece over here. We're going back to our block pile, and then we're moving over to the left to our target again, to the block pile, back to the target. Again, we're working on these horizontal pursuits the whole time that we're doing this block activity. You can also work on vertical pursuits if you have your target up here and your block pile on the bottom. So you would have maybe a different arrangement of blocks. Maybe we want to do one on either side of the arc, one block on either side of the arc. And we'll have our block pile down here on the bottom. And then we'll be using vertical visual pursuits to find our target, go back to the block pile, find the target, back to the block pile, find the target. So we've completed our 3D to 3D matching. We've increased the complexity of our design from one block to 3 blocks. And we've been working on our visual motor skills. It's time to increase the complexity even more. Now we're going to be matching from 2D model to a 3D. So we're going to start by actually working on some fine motor skills with our writing utensils, and we're going to be making some shapes. So parents, you can help out with your child as they make their own shapes, or you can make the shapes for them if their fine motor skills aren't quite fully developed yet, or they're not really able to make their own shapes, but you want to complete the matching activity anyway. But if they're able to, they would make their own little pattern. So we'd start by putting out the 3D shape, and we would copy it. So on this side we would do, we want to use this red square, so we're going to be making a red square. And we have our visual model to reference as we make our shape, and then we're going to go ahead and just color it in. So if your child has the ability, or if you want your child to work on these skills of making these shapes, this is a good time for them to do it, so that we can eventually use the blocks to then match to the shape that we just made. If your child is still developing these skills and you need to help them with any part of that, that's perfect. That's just the right sort of challenge that they would require. So make sure that we're finding the right sort of challenge for them, And in this particular set here, I went ahead and just made a 5-block pattern here with a couple different colors. So we went with red, blue, yellow, and green. I put the red at opposite sides so that there's a higher level of contrast between these colors, so that it's really accentuating the fact that there is some spatial difference between these two items here. They're oriented further apart from each other. So for things like this, we can make a bunch of different patterns ahead of time and then take pictures. I know a lot of people have tablets or iPads or even some phones. A lot of times we'll go ahead and we'll just take a picture. There it is. We'll take a picture of what we're going to do, and then we'll store it in our photo album so that we can reference them and like maybe make a folder out of them so that we can always reference them and have a folder of all these different 2D patterns that we can then replicate with our 3D blocks. So we're ready to start matching these different color blocks here. And we're going to get our blocks that we are not using out of the way. We always want to keep a clean visual field so that we're not visually distracted by other items in the field and kind of lose our visual focus. So we want to make sure that we have all of the blocks out there that we need. I'm going to go ahead and toss them out there just kind of randomly. And then we're going to construct our block pattern here using our 2D print that we made and then just matching to the color that we want. And as we're matching and completing this activity, we can go a couple different directions. Obviously, we're working on our visual perception. We're working on some good visual discrimination skills. We're working on our spatial orientation with the placement of our pieces here. But also, we can still work on our visual motor skills. So we're working on our vertical pursuits here. We can work on our horizontal pursuits if we spread out the field horizontally. We can work on our scanning if we wanted to. So we've completed our matching of a multi-block structure with different colors from a 2D model on the tabletop. Now I want to really kind of change the perspective here. We're working on eventually, building our 3D structure either out of our own kind of creation or following a visual sequence. So I do want to start having this concept of this third dimension really come into play, where we're building vertically. We're not just kind of building along on this table here, really kind of stuck in this second dimension. We're starting to build vertically. So to do that, I actually want to put my 2D drawing here on a vertical surface so that we can use that vertical surface then to start our 3D matching. But really it's kind of adding another dimension and another perspective to our visual perception skills here. So as we go ahead and complete this, we'll be mindful that we'll be adding on to this and increasing the complexity of the design as we go along. So we've worked on building our 3D construction from our 2D model. We've worked on the tabletop, and we've also stuck it on the wall, maybe bordering our table here, so that we have something to then start building our kind of third dimension, building up a little bit. But now I want to increase the challenge even more and really increase the complexity of the design. So this is using these blocks is another way that we can actually kind of work on our fine motor skills, because we're really constricted with the amount of space that we have here. We only have this area to write, say, like a letter, or if we're going to make like a shape in there or a number, that sort of thing. So it's really forcing us to use our radial precision when we write. So that's a fun way to increase the complexity of the design. Have your kid, your student, practice writing letters on these blocks, and then when you go to match them, you can actually kind of write the same letter on the block on the paper, and already we've increased the complexity of the design. So we're now not only looking for the shape, not only looking for the color, we're looking for a specific pattern on this shape and color, because I have a couple different letters here. So I'm going to make sure that I have the right one when I go ahead and match. So that's a great way to increase your fine motor skills and practice some writing while we're also building these visual perception skills up. And as we're doing that, you'll notice I'm going to have to start using my non-dominant hand a little bit more to create these patterns on these blocks. So I'm really stabilizing it. If I'm using the table to support my block, I'm going to use my non-dominant hand to stabilize the object. If you want to ensure that your student is going to be using their non-dominant hand to stabilize the object, remove the table altogether, have them hold it, and then write your letter on it. I like to go with a little bit more stability and just encourage the non-dominant hand so that we can really work on our fine motor skills while we do this, and we don't have to worry about stabilizing the object. But if we're working exclusively on bilateral coordination, remove the table, have them hold the object. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and increase the complexity of the design on my paper, and I will do circles in the green square. I will do, and let's see, number 1 in this red square. I will do the letter B in the yellow rectangle, and I will do diagonal lines in my red square. And then I'm going to have my student build this 3D construction with a complex design just like that. Really working on kind of our manipulation of this piece as we go around to find the exact pattern that we're trying to match. I start off easy because I want to ensure success. So I have all of the same pattern on this block, all of the same pattern on this block, and then it gets a little bit more complex. I need to kind of scroll around here. Where is it? Correctly orient my letter and then match it to the corresponding piece on the paper. And then again, we're increasing the complexity of the design now. So I've got a couple different letters here and a smaller object. So I really have to manipulate the object using some great fine motor skills, some good visual discrimination skills, and then spatial orientation skills as I place this particular piece here, not sideways, on top of it, directly on top of it, correctly oriented with the letter. And then for my last one, this is going to be the most complex. I have a set of diagonal lines with 5 lines. I have some kind of squiggly lines. I have an X. I've created all of these different patterns on just one block so that I can use it in a bunch of different ways. So is it this one? No, it is not. I'm going to keep flipping around until I find the correct pattern, and I want to make sure that I'm orienting it correctly. Again, that's not going, from the top on the left to the bottom on the right. This is going from the bottom on the left to the top on the right. So I want to orient this thing correctly. So these blocks are just a really fun way to work on some visual motor skills, some visual perception skills, and then we also get this great opportunity to work on our fine motor skills, our bilateral coordination. We can even work in some sensory integration if we change our head position while we do this. Maybe our target is on the wall and our visual field is, say on the ground, where I have to bend over to locate the item, to pick it up, and then to match it on the table. that sort of thing. We're integrating vestibular and ocular, vestibular and visual systems there. And then we also get to work on our handwriting if we want to. Or if we're not quite at handwriting, maybe we want to work on practicing our shape construction and shape design with some visual cues, that sort of thing. Square, visual cues on the corner. Practice drawing the square, maybe with some assistance, maybe some independence. And then we're going to be really increasing the challenge as we go, increasing the complexity of the design. We're going to be using this paper. You can keep adding on to it. The more blocks you have, the better. You can continue to increase the complexity of the design as you go along. Maybe the next one you have is an arc. So it has a little bit of this going on. These are cool pieces. I really like that. So we're now adding on to our sequence here, and we are able to construct our 3D model with the blocks that we have, increasing the complexity of the design as our student gains these skills. You can help your student to do any level of participation of this activity, and then I encourage you to either save your paper that you're working on so that you can add on to it later, or use a device like a tablet or an iPad, that sort of thing, and take a picture of your design so that you can go back and reference it later, and your child can then use the same blocks with a different design and construct the pattern the way that you have it designed on your paper. Thanks for checking out my video today. I hope you found it useful. Feel free to get in touch with me if you have any questions on how to implement these strategies with your student.